In this video, we're going to show you how to replace a front knuckle on your Volkswagen Passat. This is going to be located behind your front wheel. Let's get started. Using a right angle pick, remove all the plastic caps. Get behind them, pull straight out. Using a 17mm socket, remove the 5 lug studs. When we remove this last lug stud, the wheel's going to want to fall off. Be sure you have a hand on the tire. Remove the wheel. I have 2 lug studs installed because my rotor screw is sheared. This is going to hold the rotor to the hub. And I'm going to hold the rotor in the brake caliper using a punch. Use a 12.24mm socket and break the axle bolt free. Remove the axle bolt. Since I don't have a rotor screw, my rotor just wants to kind of fall off. To prevent this, I'm going to take an old axle nut. I'm going to take my lug stud. I'm just going to tighten the lug stud down, and this will hold my rotor against my hub for me. Reach behind the knuckle and be sure that your axle moves freely inside of the hub. If it doesn't, take a punch and punch it in until it starts to move freely. Using an 18mm wrench, we're going to get on the nut. We're going to use a 5mm Allen bit to hold the stud. We're going to remove the nut. Remove the nut for the sway bar link. Push the link out of the strut bracket and out of the way. Using a 10mm wrench, remove the bolt for the brake line and ABS bracket. Remove the bolt and pull the bracket off. Using a 21mm socket, remove the caliper bracket bolts. Remove the 2 bolts. When you do this, have a hand on the caliper assembly. It will want to fall off. I'm going to use a hook. I'm going to hook my caliper onto that. I'm going to remove the stud that is holding my rotor on. If you have the rotor screw, go ahead and remove that and remove your rotor. Remove the connector for the ABS sensor. Push on that tab, pull straight back, and remove the connector. There's your push tab right there. Push on that, pull straight back, pull it off to the side, out of the way. Using a 19mm socket, remove the nut for the tie rod end. Using a hammer, we're going to hit the side of the knuckle to break the tension free. Pull the outer tie rod out of the knuckle. Using a 14mm triple square and an 18mm wrench, we're going to hold our nut and remove the bolt. Remove the nut and remove the bolt. Using a 17mm socket, remove the 3 nuts for the lower ball joint. Pull down on the lower control arm and remove the ball joint and pull the axle back. We're going to remove our knuckle from our strut. You can use a punch and go in between these 2 ears in the back to help you open it up. You also may need to use a hammer to tap it off. Remove the knuckle. Using a 12mm triple square, we're going to remove the 4 bolts for our wheel bearing. Remove all 4 bolts for the wheel bearing. Remove the wheel bearing from the knuckle. Using an 18mm socket, we're going to remove the nut for the ball joint. Remove the nut. I'm going to use a hammer and release the tension between the ball joint and the knuckle. Remove the ball joint. Using a T30 bit, remove the backing plate bolts. Remove the backing plate. Using a 5mm Allen bit, we're going to remove the screw for the ABS sensor. Wiggle the sensor back and forth and pull straight down, removing it from the knuckle. Install the ABS sensor into the new knuckle. Install the bolt. Get the bolt started by hand and snug it down. Install the backing plate. Get the screws started. Install the wheel bearing into place and get the bolt started. Snug the bolts down. Torque the wheel bearing bolts in a cross pattern to 70 Newton meters. If you're using new bolts, you're going to go an extra 90 degrees. Install the ball joint into the knuckle. Get the nut started. Snug the nut down. When you do this, be sure that the stud's not spinning. If your stud is spinning, you can hold it with a 5mm Allen head while using your 18mm to snug down the nut. Torque the ball joint nut to 60 Newton meters. Be sure that the stud does not spin when you do this. Using a punch and a hammer, I have my knuckle spread apart. Install it onto the strut. Get it fully installed, up and into place. Make sure it bottoms out inside of the knuckle. And get the bolt installed from the back. Get the nut installed on the other side. Remove the punch. Make sure your strut is fully bottomed out into the knuckle. And then snug down the bolt. Install the axle into the back of the hub. I'm going to pull down on my control arm. Make sure the axle is sliding into the hub with the splines correctly. And then get the ball joint into the control arm. Install the nuts. And snug them down. Snug the nuts down. Torque the ball joint nuts to 100 Newton meters. Install the rotor. If you have it, line up your rotor for the rotor screw. I'm going to install a lug stud, and I have an old axle nut to hold my rotor for me. I'm going to pull the brake caliper off of the hook I was using. Install it around the rotor. Get the bracket bolts started by hand. Snug the bolts down. Torque the bolts to 200 Newton meters. If you can't get a torque wrench on it, do the best you can. Install the brake line bracket onto the knuckle and get the bolt installed. Snug the bolt down. Install the outer tie rod into the knuckle. Install the nut on the bottom. Snug the nut down. Be sure that the stud does not spin when you do this. If you're using a new nut, you're going to torque it to 20 Newton meters and then an additional 90 degrees. I'm going to be reusing my nut, and I'm going to torque this to 80 Newton meters. Install the sway bar link into the strut. Get the nut started. Hold the stud using a 5mm Allen and snug the nut down. Get the nut nice and snug. Be sure that the stud is not spinning. Torque the nut to 65 Newton meters. Be sure that the stud does not spin when you do this. I'm going to install a punch in between the cooling fins of my brake rotor. I'm going to install my axle bolt. Get this started by hand. Using a 27mm socket, we're going to snug down the bolt. Torque the bolt to 200 Newton meters. Now we're going to go an additional 180 degrees. Remove the punch. Remove the lug stud and the old axle nut holding the rotor on if you used one. Install the connector, push until you hear a click. If you don't, give it a pull, make sure it's locked on. Install the wheel, get a lug stud started, snug it down to hold the wheel, get the rest of the lug studs started, snug them down. Using a 17mm socket, torque the lug studs to 103 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Install the plastic caps, and you're good to go.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.